Marina Diaz, a 22-year-old resident of Granada, vanished without a trace during the height of a festive celebration, leaving her friends and loved ones in complete shock and confusion. The last time anyone saw her, she was dressed in an elegant evening gown, stepping out of a building filled with laughter and people toasting with champagne. That night, Marina seemed to melt away into the darkness, leaving behind only fragmented and contradictory pieces of information about her disappearance. Just a few hours later, the story took an ominous turn, one that led to countless questions but almost no clear answers. What really happened that night? The remaining evidence and strange testimonies only deepened the mystery, making everyone wonder. Was Marina just a victim of circumstance, or was there something far more sinister behind her vanishing? Marina Diaz Vasilis grew up in Granada, in the southern Spanish region of Andalusia. She was born on December 24, 2002, and was one of 5 siblings. She lived with her mother, Maria Teresa, and her 4 sisters. The identity of Marina's father remains a mystery, with no publicly available information about him. The family lived modestly, but always tried to support one another. The most well-known facts about Marina's life come from her social media presence. She was active online, frequently sharing moments from her day-to-day experiences. Her posts highlighted her outgoing nature and her love of an adventurous lifestyle. Marina often uploaded photos with friends, attended parties, enjoyed the outdoors, and went to concerts. Details about how she landed her job are unclear, but some reports speculated that it may have been through a connection with the pharmacy owners. However, these rumors have never been confirmed. Additionally, it remains uncertain if Marina had plans to pursue higher education to further her career. At the time she started working at the pharmacy, she was only 17 years old, making it seem like her first real step toward independence. The real changes in Marina's life began when she turned 16. That's when she met Jasmine, a woman significantly older than her. Jasmine was born in the late 1980s, nearly twice Marina's age. How they first crossed paths remains a mystery, but the relationship raised alarm bells within Marina's family. Her mother, Maria Teresa, shared in interviews that they were against the connection from the beginning. The family believed Jasmine had a strong influence over Marina, leading her down a dangerous path. According to Maria Teresa, Marina had a gentle and vulnerable nature, which made her susceptible to Jasmine's manipulative behavior. Jasmine became a significant figure in Marina's life, and their relationship began to transform her world in unsettling ways. Marina's mother and other family members saw this as a threat, believing that Marina had fallen under an outside influence that could lead to unpredictable outcomes. They were deeply concerned that Jasmine, leveraging her authority and age difference, was guiding Marina down a path she might never have chosen on her own. Details about Marina's childhood and teenage years remain fragmented and incomplete, giving the impression that many important aspects of her life were either lost or overlooked. Her relatives described her as an energetic and ambitious young woman who had the potential to achieve great things through sheer determination and a drive for self-improvement. Marina grew up in a nurturing environment, surrounded by the care of her family. She had a large circle of friends and was well-liked among her peers for her openness and eagerness to help others. However, her meeting with Jasmine changed everything, leaving her loved ones with many unanswered questions. Marina met Jasmine in 2019. Initially, no one thought much of their connection, assuming it was just a typical part of growing up. But over time, troubling changes in Marina's behavior became evident. She began to withdraw from family gatherings and shared fewer and fewer details about her life. Marina's mother, Maria Teresa, immediately noticed her daughter's growing distance. Marina, who had always been open with her, became secretive and irritable when asked about her new relationship. Maria Teresa grew more worried, suspecting that Marina was under a negative influence. Attempts to discuss this with Marina often ended in silence or frustration. As time went on, the situation only got worse. According to relatives, Jasmine increasingly took control of Marina's life, monitoring her every move. The relationship showed clear signs of serious manipulation and mistreatment. It started with emotional pressure. Marina felt she had to justify everything she did, and her personal boundaries were completely violated. Marina tried to explain what was happening to her mother, but spoke in a low voice and with evident fear, worried that Jasmine would find out about their conversations. Over time, Jasmine's grip tightened, and there were even instances of physical aggression. In one particularly disturbing incident, Jasmine not only struck Marina, but, as Maria Teresa recounted, violently cut off Marina's hair in a fit of rage. This act became a symbol of how far the control over her daughter had gone. After that, Marina almost entirely cut off communication with her family. Attempts by her mother and sisters to reach out or meet with her were blocked by Jasmine, who worked hard to keep them apart. Maria Teresa made repeated efforts to alert law enforcement about the situation. However, she claimed that the police were slow to intervene, viewing her concerns as insufficient grounds for a serious investigation. The year 2021 marked a major turning point. For reasons still unknown, Jasmine made the decision to completely isolate Marina. They moved to an undisclosed location, cutting off all remaining ties with Marina's family. Her sisters and mother tried everything they could to find her, but their efforts were in vain. Marina, who used to confide in her mother about her fears, was no longer able to do so. Jasmine had threatened both Marina and her loved ones, warning of severe consequences if Marina ever tried to leave or reach out for help. According to her cousin, Shumar, Marina would sometimes call her family in tears, begging them not to take any action that might anger Jasmine. Marina feared that even the slightest misstep could lead to a tragic outcome. Jasmine's manipulation and control extended not just over Marina, but also to her family, creating an atmosphere of fear and desperation. Marina's loved ones mentioned that she seemed broken, as if she had lost all hope of escaping this nightmare. What started as an ordinary romantic relationship had turned into a complete trap. Marina became fully cut off from her normal life. Her friends lost touch with her, and she stopped appearing in places where she had once been a familiar and respected presence. Maria Teresa, Marina's mother, felt helpless in the face of these threats and manipulations, but never gave up trying to find ways to help her daughter. She reached out to friends and acquaintances, hoping to uncover any lead that might bring her closer to Marina. Unfortunately, none of these efforts were successful. Maria Teresa often described feeling utterly powerless, having no idea where her daughter had gone. Once, Marina's life had seemed full of potential, but her relationship with Jasmine had completely changed her fate. Marina found herself in a situation where she had no freedom or ability to make decisions for herself. The isolation and relentless pressure from Jasmine made her entirely dependent, leaving her separated from the people who loved her most. Despite their best attempts to rescue her, the family's efforts came up empty. By 2021, Marina Diaz's family had completely lost any means of maintaining contact with her. Jasmine, her partner, had taken every possible measure to ensure that no one knew where they were living. Maria Teresa had no idea whether her daughter was in a house or an apartment, or even in which part of the city they were hiding. Every attempt to uncover their whereabouts failed. The information they got from acquaintances was confusing and inconsistent. In the end, Marina's family found themselves in a hopeless situation, unable to reach her or offer any help. From the very start of Marina's relationship with Jasmine in 2019, Maria Teresa felt a growing sense of danger for her daughter. As time went on, the situation became increasingly alarming. Marina stopped answering calls, and her social media accounts hadn't been updated in ages. Maria Teresa felt powerless, knowing that something was terribly wrong but unable to change it. Each day, her anxiety for Marina's safety grew more intense. The realization that Marina was completely dependent on Jasmine and trapped in isolation left her feeling vulnerable and consumed with fear for her daughter's well-being. On April 13, 2021, Jasmine unexpectedly walked into the Motril Police Department and made a confession that stunned the officers. She calmly explained that the day before, she and Marina Diaz had a serious argument. According to Jasmine, tensions that morning over breakfast escalated into a heated confrontation. Marina, Jasmine claimed, grabbed a knife and began making threats, yelling that she couldn't endure the mistreatment anymore and wanted to leave. Jasmine stated that she felt endangered, and in a moment of panic, she managed to wrestle the knife away, ultimately striking Marina several times. She insisted it all happened so fast, and she lost control of herself. After the incident, Jasmine attempted to cover up what had happened. She wrapped Marina's body in a bedsheet, took a shower, and meticulously cleaned the house. Using cleaning supplies, she wiped away any traces of blood and disposed of the knife in a garbage container on her way to the village of Gorgar. Jasmine was careful to avoid drawing attention, going to great lengths to hide any evidence. Later that afternoon, around 5 p.m., Jasmine made her way to the port of Motril, where she met up with her friend Antonio Manuel. Antonio Manuel was stunned by Jasmine's confession when she told him what had occurred. Jasmine asked for his help in getting rid of the body. Antonio was taken aback and didn't know how to respond. When later arrested, Antonio claimed that Jasmine had only come to him seeking emotional support and denied having any involvement in the crime. He stated that he had been trying to process what she had told him, but was unsure how to handle the situation or what action to take. Investigators suspected that Antonio's role in this crime was far more significant than he claimed. They believed his involvement went beyond simply offering Jasmine emotional support. The circumstances of their interactions and the details that surfaced during the investigation indicated that Antonio might have been actively involved in covering up evidence. Authorities put forward theories suggesting he may have helped in cleaning up the scene and attempting to dispose of the body. However, Antonio denied all such accusations, insisting he was in a state of shock and couldn't fully grasp the gravity of the situation. Events on that day unfolded rapidly and with high drama. Jasmine's confession on April 13, 2021, became the starting point for further investigative action. She described her actions as self-defense, but subsequent evidence painted a picture of what appeared to be premeditated and meticulously executed behavior. Investigators noted that, following the crime, Jasmine showed no signs of panic or fear. Instead, she methodically cleaned the scene, making a deliberate effort to remove all traces of blood. The weapon, a knife, was discarded far from the crime scene, suggesting an attempt to minimize the chances of evidence being discovered. Jasmine maintained that she acted in a moment of overwhelming emotion, but her calm and calculated behavior raised serious doubts among the investigators. They questioned whether someone genuinely acting in self-defense would have the presence of mind to clean the entire house, destroy evidence, and plan a cover-up immediately afterward. In addition, investigators received reports about Jasmine's meeting with Antonio at the port, during which methods of disposing of the body were allegedly discussed. This meeting became a crucial piece of the investigation. When police conducted a search of the home that Marina Diaz and Jasmine had been renting, they discovered several significant pieces of evidence. Upon entering, officers were immediately struck by the strong smell of cleaning agents permeating the entire space, pointing to an extensive effort to erase any signs of the incident. In one of the rooms, they found Marina's body, wrapped in a blanket and carefully hidden. An initial examination revealed multiple stab wounds, but forensic specialists were called in to confirm these findings. On April 14, 2021, specialists from the National Police in Madrid arrived in Granada for a more thorough examination of the crime scene. They brought advanced equipment designed to detect even the smallest trace evidence that might have been overlooked during a standard search. Using ultraviolet lights and chemical reagents, the forensic team meticulously scanned every surface in the house. This analysis revealed blood traces indicating areas where a struggle likely took place, helping reconstruct the sequence of events. Small but significant details emerged, further supporting the theory that a violent confrontation had occurred. Some of the discovered evidence allowed investigators to establish a clearer timeline of the day's events. Experts noted bloodstains that mapped the movements of both the victim and the assailant throughout the house. Additionally, they identified marks on the floor leading from the room where Marina's body was found to the kitchen and down the hallway, indicating that her body had been moved or dragged after the incident. On April 18th, 4 days after Jasmine's confession, the first instance court number 3 in Motril ordered that she be held in custody without the option of bail until her trial. The Andalusian Supreme Court upheld this decision, explaining that the measure was necessary to ensure the integrity of the investigation and to prevent any potential tampering with witnesses or destruction of evidence. Although Jasmine had no prior criminal record, the severity of the crime left the court with no other choice. Meanwhile, Marina's body was transferred to the city's Forensic Institute for a full autopsy. The results confirmed that the cause of death was 24 stab wounds inflicted by Jasmine. Additionally, Marina's body bore over 20 other injuries, highlighting the extreme level of aggression involved. These findings became pivotal to the investigation, guiding law enforcement's next steps. On the same day, the court addressed the case of Antonio Manuel, Jasmine's friend, who was also under suspicion for allegedly helping to cover up the crime. Although Antonio was released, several restrictions were imposed. He was required to report to authorities every Tuesday and had his passport confiscated to prevent any attempts to leave the country. Since neither side pressed for his immediate arrest, he remained free but under strict surveillance. That same day, the Granada authorities announced that the incident would be classified as a case of domestic aggression, since Marina and Jasmine lived together and were in a relationship. This decision sparked controversy, with some critics arguing that the crime was far more complex and shouldn't be reduced to a domestic case. Nevertheless, officials determined that categorizing it this way would fit the legal framework necessary for an effective investigation. The investigation was further complicated by the need to consider all testimonies, including that of Antonio Manuel. Despite his claims of innocence, investigators didn't rule out his potential involvement in covering up evidence. The court examined every possible version of events to establish what role, if any, Antonio had played in the aftermath of the incident. His court-mandated obligations, like reporting weekly, were crucial measures to monitor his movements and prevent any attempts to evade the investigation. Despite swift actions by law enforcement, the trial didn't commence until December 13, 2022, nearly 2 years after the event. The long wait took an emotional toll on Marina's family and friends, who desperately sought justice. When Jasmine was brought to court, Marina's loved ones greeted her with loud cries and expressions of outrage, demanding accountability for the loss of the young woman who had just reached adulthood and had her whole life ahead of her. The trial was lengthy, and as it progressed, more details about the crime came to light. The brutality of the act was corroborated by forensic evidence. Experts from the city's Forensic Institute described the multiple injuries Marina had sustained, which became crucial evidence against Jasmine and helped piece together the sequence of her criminal actions. One of the most pivotal moments of the trial came from the testimony of a psychologist. This psychologist had worked with both Marina and her mother, Maria Teresa, and disclosed that Marina had repeatedly expressed fear of Jasmine. She described Jasmine's aggressive behavior and how she often resorted to coercive control. The psychologist also revealed that Marina felt completely dependent and trapped, unable to end the relationship due to fear of severe consequences. Maria Teresa had tried to find ways to support her daughter, even seeking professional assistance, but her efforts had been in vain. Meanwhile, Marina's family attorney, Jesus Huertas, focused on the brutality of the crime. He detailed the injuries Marina had suffered and emphasized how Jasmine had systematically isolated her from friends and family, making her even more vulnerable. The attorney pushed for a life sentence for Jasmine, arguing that this was the only just punishment for her actions. At the same time, Jasmine's defense claimed that she was in poor mental and physical condition. Her attorney argued that she had been taking antidepressants and using prohibited substances, which impaired her ability to properly understand and react to her circumstances. The defense insisted that Jasmine's actions were a reaction to a knife threat from Marina and pleaded for leniency from the court. The prosecution, citing testimony from a psychologist and Marina's family members, argued that Marina's death was deliberate and premeditated. They highlighted how Jasmine had intentionally cut Marina off from her support network, exerting controlling behavior. The prosecution requested a 17-year prison sentence, contending that Jasmine had prolonged Marina's suffering and knowingly deprived her of her life. In early March 2023, a temporary court in Granada delivered its verdict. Jasmine was found guilty of a crime with aggravated circumstances tied to their domestic relationship and was sentenced to 17 years in prison. The court considered Jasmine's voluntary confession as a mitigating factor, but ruled that she would be monitored by authorities for 5 years after her release. Additionally, Jasmine was ordered to pay financial compensation to Marina's family, 75,000 euros to her mother, Maria Teresa, and 22,000 euros to each of her 4 sisters. Furthermore, she was prohibited from contacting them for 2 years following her release. During the initial court hearing, Jasmine expressed remorse for what had happened and acknowledged the gravity of her actions. She stated that she had turned herself in because she felt Marina didn't deserve an unmarked grave. Jasmine claimed her decision was motivated by a desire to ensure Marina had a proper burial and by her willingness to accept responsibility. She insisted that she never intended to cause harm and had acted in self-defense, though her account contradicted testimony from Marina's relatives and previous statements she had made. Antonio Manuel, a friend of Jasmine, initially faced a potential 15-month prison sentence for his role in helping to conceal the crime. However, the court dropped all charges against him, citing his cognitive disability and concluding that he didn't fully comprehend the seriousness of his actions. Marina's family expressed their dissatisfaction with this decision, arguing that the punishment was too lenient given Antonio's involvement. They announced their intention to appeal, stressing that the light measures taken against Antonio failed to reflect the severity of the crime. On the day Antonio's release was confirmed, Marina's family issued a public statement expressing their frustration with the Spanish judicial system. They criticized the lack of adequate support from legal institutions and stated that the case had not been appropriately recognized as a serious instance of domestic aggression. The victims' relatives insisted that the case should have been classified under laws that reflect the gravity of the situation. They argued that failing to acknowledge the crime as an act of domestic abuse was unacceptable and could negatively impact future victims facing similar circumstances. In July 2023, the Andalusian Supreme Court reviewed appeals from both sides. Jasmine's defense, which sought a reduced sentence or complete overturn, and Marina's family, who wanted a harsher penalty. The court upheld the original sentence of 17 years in prison, citing the extensive evidence presented during the trial. It ruled that the punishment was appropriate given the gravity of the crime. Maria Teresa, Marina's mother, shared in interviews the immense struggles her family endured after Marina's tragic death. She emphasized how her repeated reports of Jasmine's aggressive behavior were not taken seriously, and the police failed to take necessary measures to protect her daughter. The family felt powerless, fully aware of the danger Marina faced in her relationship, but unable to intervene effectively. The situation became even more dire when Marina and Jasmine moved, cutting Marina off completely from her loved ones. Maria Teresa also spoke about the pain of listening to Jasmine's statements in court. In her view, Jasmine's expressions of regret were insincere and intended solely to reduce her sentence. Maria believed that Jasmine knew exactly what she was doing and intentionally inflicted harm on her daughter. Marina's story has become a heartbreaking example of how authorities and society can fail to protect victims of abusive situations. Her family continued to fight for justice, not only seeking a harsher punishment for those responsible, but also aiming to set a legal precedent that could help others in similar situations. This case highlights the critical need for a swift and effective response to signs of abuse, as well as the importance of improving support systems for victims to prevent future tragedies.